boomers. Shout out to the boomers. Shout out to the boomers. They said that boomers own half of all of the wealth. So before we get into the reaction video, I want to deep dive into this really quickly. And I don't know how true this is, but I seen this pop up on the Wall Street Journal, and I wanted to share this with you guys. So we're just going to spend 10 minutes on this, and we're going to keep it moving.
This chart shows median net worth by generation in the U.S., and it's what many people think of when they refer to boomers as the wealthiest generation. But that's only part of the story. As a whole, they hold about half of U.S. wealth, much of it in real estate. But that's mostly these boomers, born between 1946 and 1954. The younger boomers, on the other hand, are increasingly struggling with homelessness. Here's how boomers are exacerbating the housing shortage.
Hold on, let me back that up. Let me see that one more time.
Half of U.S. wealth, much.
They say that boomers own about half of U.S. wealth. All right, so this is what we got. We got boomers, Generation X, millennials, and the silent generation. Now, born in 1982, they call me a geriatric millennial, meaning that I'm at the very tail end of the millennials, right? So they said millennials own 20.8 trillion, Generation X, 44.8 trillion, and then the silent generation, I'm guessing that's Gen Z, owns $20.6 trillion of wealth. How does the silent generation, okay, hold on, wait. What is the silent generation? Let me double check this. Silent, okay, so it's not. Generation X is different. The silent generation are roughly from the mid-1920s to the 1940s. All right, I didn't know that, so I learned something new. All right, so we are the generation that's the last generation, the youngest generation as far as what they can say and control the majority of the wealth. Because Gen Z apparently ain't got nothing, right? Gen Z don't got nothing. So the silent generation is between 1920 and 1940. And then you got the millennials and then Generation X and the boomers. And they're saying that the boomers own 80.6 trillion, which is roughly half of all of the wealth inside of the United States of America. All right, so we doing some work. We doing some math today.
Much of it in real estate. But that's mostly these boomers, born between 1946 and 1954.
Woo! So 46 through 54 is the ones that got rich. I don't want to hear no excuses. I keep telling y'all that all of the problems that we have is basically given to us by previous generations because they didn't do what they were supposed to do, especially with regard to relationships. They stole all of the money and they kept it all for themselves, and now they want to sit here and play the victim. But all of the rest of you boomers are suffering.
The younger boomers, on the other hand, are increasingly struggling with homelessness. Here's how.
So think about it. I say it all the time, and I'm going to let the video play after this. I say this regularly. I say, listen, what you do in your younger years absolutely exacerbates or it magnifies in your later years. So you very rarely have people that get older and then they stay in the middle, right? Either you get way worse and you're on the poor end of the spectrum, or you get way much greater and you're on the high end of the spectrum. But you very rarely get people that's able to straddle the middle for their entire lives. And so the middle, when they say the middle class, is often at times the working class. Those are the people that make a certain amount of money. They feel good because they're able to purchase things and they mortgage in their future in order to satisfy their present. And they don't stack and they don't do any of that. And so you got the people that stack and get compound interest. And then you got the people that suffer when they get older. But it's no in between as you get older, because the more you grow, you're either going to grow like this or you're going to grow like that. But you never grow in a straight line, and people never, ever be comfortable just right in the middle and stand in the middle for the rest of their life. That is reserved for the working class. That is reserved for people that are still in the workforce. As long as you stay in the workforce, you'll be fine. But as soon as you leave the workforce, either you thrive or you absolutely fail 100%. There is no in between as you get older. Either you get poor or you get richer. And so the decisions that you make today, shout out to Quentin, the decisions that you make today is largely going to be the determining factor for whether or not you're successful in the future. That's just the facts.
Boomers are exacerbating the housing shortage and overwhelming local economies as a record number of them age. Around 80% of older boomers, who are now mostly in their 70s, are homeowners.
These are folks who were able to buy homes when they were younger. A lot of them have paid off their mortgages, and their homes have appreciated a lot over the last few decades.
Boomers own over 35% of all large homes in the U.S. Most of those homes belong to households with no children living with them. What's happening is that these older Americans are increasingly choosing to age in place.
They feel a connection to the community. Financially, they might feel kind of stuck with their home. I already own this free and clear. If I wanted to buy another home, that new home is going to cost a lot more.
This trend of older homeowners hanging on to their houses is exacerbating the housing shortage and contributing to rising home prices.
It's especially acute of a problem right now because millennials are at kind of a prime home buying time in their lives, and the millennial generation is a very large generation.
California homeowners typically stay put the longest.
California has a very unique tax structure where you're very much incentivized to stay where you are, because as long as you stay in your home, your property taxes won't go up.
Not all boomers are holding on to their large homes. Around 20% are selling. But one reason this might not be making as big of an impact on the housing shortage is that boomers aren't really downsizing with their new home, so they're not increasing the supply of large homes on the market.
And so usually what happens is when you get older, because I did it with my parents, once my parents got to retirement age or they got to a certain level, what you did was you forced them out of that house and you said, hey, this is too much house for you. I don't want you going up and down the stairs. There's no reason for you to have 4 bedrooms when it's just y'all two. All of the kids is out of the house. We're not coming back. Why don't y'all make y'all life easier? And so they don't downsize. They don't always downsize in order to reduce the costs. A lot of times they downsize because it's just better for their lifestyle and they spend more time outside of the house. And you realize that you use a small percentage of your house versus the amount of house that you actually own. The difference is nowadays it's to where you can't really afford to sell because then you own just enough equity to where you don't want to leave where you at. So if you sell over in California, it's going to be hard for you to actually find a different place, especially if you're above a certain threshold for the value of your crib. And if you do move, then you probably can afford just as much house. So you wind up buying the same size house and you're not really downsizing. So there's a lot of boomers, and somebody said it in the chat, the boomers did a heck of a job hoarding all of the wealth. 1,000%. They are not spending the way that they're supposed to, and they are not going poor like we need them to. You know what I'm saying?
That could be driven by there not being a lot of good, what we call starter home or kind of smaller home options. Because in general, when builders are building, they tend to be building larger and more expensive homes.
At the same time, younger
and don't
boomers
nobody else
are
want to pay them HOA fees either.
driving up the number of older homeless people in cities across the country.
Elderly homelessness has been rare since the reemergence of homelessness in the mid-1980s. Usually it's been people in their 20s and 30s and 40s. But now we're approaching close to 30% of the adult homeless population are people 55 and over.
This is partly due to the fact that boomers are such a big cohort, and since the 80s, they've made up the largest share of the homeless population. This chart shows how younger boomers...
Oh, the boomers is used to being homeless. Okay, all right. So y'all used to taking dumps over in the corner. I get it.
Specifically, have made up about 1/3 of the U.S. homeless population for decades. But a lot of boomers are also experiencing homelessness for the first time as they've gotten older. A 2023 UCSF study found that over 40% of homeless older adults in California were homeless for the first time after the age of 50. For some, this was caused by a major life event like the death of a spouse or a medical emergency. For others, especially those living on Social Security, it was due to high housing costs. In Naples, Florida, for example, there are more elderly homeless people as Social Security payments haven't kept up with rent increases.
Let me tell y'all something. A, y'all need to move to a cheaper place because y'all keep on trying to hold on to the life that you previously had. No, man, move further up. That's number one. Number two, I tell y'all this all the time. Some of y'all keep on neglecting, investing, and putting money in your 401ks. Oh, man, that ain't nothing or whatever. Okay, you're going to be out there on these streets, and I ain't going to be giving you no money. You're going to be out here on these streets when you get past 50 because you're going to be dependent on the federal government and Social Security, and that ain't even fully funded. I'm telling you, bro, look, At the very least, y'all need to be maxing out on your 401k every single year. The last thing you want when you get older is to be worried about running out of money before you die. That is a miserable expense. That is a miserable existence. It's a miserable situation. It's a miserable burden to put on your loved ones to have to take care of you when they get older. It's miserable. The last thing you want to do is have to worry about how much money you're going to have when you die. And I know that it's this conflicting thing where you got people out here saying stuff like, well, you can't take it with you and all of this. Well, what if you outlive it? What if you out here on these streets begging? What if it start raining in the daytime and then you got to walk around with mildew clothes on? That's no way to live. That's no way to live, y'all.
There's also a significant number of people who worked jobs that didn't contribute to Social Security, so they're ineligible for Social Security income in retirement.
We see it very often in things like migrant labor, construction, especially demolition, high-risk kind of jobs that are low-skilled. So instead, they get this program called Supplemental Security Income, which is around $950 a month right now.
Homes at the very bottom of the market have also been heavily affected by the nationwide housing shortage.
The supply of those marginal but available housing options shrinks in the context of a very hot real estate market, because even these properties that were serving very low-income people, hotels, motels, the price is going up for those, and the people.
Somebody in the chat saying, Anton, if you have a lot of credit card debt, should you still contribute to your 401k? My rule of thumb is this, is that you always get the free money. Always get the free money. Always get the free money, meaning that if you have a match coming from your job, usually it's in a 5 to 6% range. If you're working for a nonprofit or a university or something like that, then usually you can get it double matched, or you can get it matched, a 1-for-1 match. When I was working at the University of Michigan, I always maxed out because we got a double match. That means for every dollar you contribute, they contribute 2 into it. And that was one of the ways in which you grow your net worth. So my rule of thumb is to always, at minimum, get the match. Get whatever it is that you got to get the maximum match. All right? That's A. And then B, you throw everything else that you have at the debt. Because you cannot climb Mount Everest with rocks inside of your backpack. Get the free money and then get rid of the debt. And then take the same approach, the money that you was throwing towards the debt, you then throw it into your investments, which then will put you in a position to be able to compound your wealth. But the enemy of wealth is debt 100%. 100%. Always get the match, and then always, after you get the match, throw as much money as you can to getting rid of the debt. All right? Never walk around with debt. If
people want to sell, they want to convert, knock down new buildings, what have you.
Low-cost assisted living centers, which were never built in adequate numbers to handle the large boomer generation, have also been closing amid staffing shortages and financial troubles. Researchers estimate that in New York City alone, healthcare and shelter costs will surpass $450 million by 2030. Academic researchers attribute the different economic prospects of the older and younger boomers to something called the Cohort Effect, which is the idea that people born in the same period share unique experiences as they move across time.
The older baby boomers in particular, this is a generation that was coming of age into an economy that was really booming.
When they bought homes in the 70s or 80s, home prices were low and interest rates were high.
What happened right after that was that you had 4 decades where interest rates basically just fell. That meant that even though they were entering into home ownership at a time when rates were high, they were able to refinance.
The second half of the boomer generation came of age during back-to-back recessions.
They faced a very crowded housing market. Prices were escalating. Young adults in particular faced the challenge of getting entry into the labor market.
Between jobs are hard to come by. How about you? You hiring?
The crack cocaine epidemic in the 80s led many to
No, not homie sitting there in front of the computer talking about the crack cocaine epidemic in the 80s. Hold on. Let me get that right there. Not you sitting in front of the TV with the prescription stuff in the background with a sweater on, trying to figure out how you can get that mean rock off.
epidemic in the 80s led many to struggle with homelessness.
And that population has continued to be at risk as they've gotten older.
Sometimes if you miss a window by, even 5 years, 10 years, you're looking at a very different housing market, or you're looking at a very different labor market, and it takes time to catch up.
Over the next 10 years, some researchers are counting on what they call a silver tsunami, a huge wave of housing inventory from baby boomers aging out of their homes.
And guess who's gonna be there willing to take it all in? Anton from Anton Daniels and the Bag Chasers. Yeah. We're going to be waiting. We're going to be watching. We're going to be anticipating. We're going to be rubbing our hands like Birdman. And we're going to be waiting to buy everything. Everything. We're going to buy all 9 million homes, man.